Man, despite his artistic pretensions, owes his existence to a 6-inch layer of topsoil and the fact that it rains. Welcome to Maverick-Minute. This week's student shout out goes out to Kaylee May, Evelyn Carter, and Mallory Morton. They've also been working pretty hard on their beef research project that they're working on. They spent most of the morning in conference calls today, and they're doing some good research. I'd also like to give a shout out to Ben Hines, who's working on a special speech called "Will the Real Milk Please Stand Up?" The last time we met, we learned about the plant in front of me, Broomsedge, and that it's an indicator species telling us that there's a management practice we need to consider. That management practice is soil testing. Stick with us today to see some very basic ways that you can incorporate soil testing on your farm. Here's a snapshot of some of the tools that are essential for making soil testing less of a chore and more of a task that's actually able to get done on your farm in a timely fashion. I think you're all probably acquainted with a cordless drill. It's good to have a couple batteries on hand. The soil test sheet is important to have. We utilize Custom Labs in Monette, and they send us some pretty handy little soil sample bags that we can put our soil in. And then finally over here on the right is our auger drill bit. You can purchase these directly from Collect and Go. They're about 50 bucks, and it's an essential tool. This allows us to pull a soil sample out even in times of drought when the soil is very compacted and it's difficult to pull a sample out. If you were to compare it with a tool that you press into the soil, to me this is very advantageous. The piece of orange tape just marks 6 inches of depth, so I know when to stop when I'm utilizing the tool. Finally, this is just a cheap old Tupperware from some type of food that we've had at the house, and essentially this bit cut that hole. It's a perfect circle. It's because the bit accomplished that. It was able to cut the hole when it was brand new. However, I would tell you, don't use this Tupperware. When you order your bit from Collect and Go, you have the option to pick up a bucket that actually has a hole in the bottom with a spout. And I think that does two things for you. Number one, the spout actually acts like an auger that allows the soil to be pulled up through that auger area. And secondly, you can see that our Tupperware is cracked. That's because even though the bottom of my Tupperware is flat, the ground is not flat. And whenever I push down against the soil to have good contact to allow my bit to run through, there's no way that this Tupperware can sit truly flush to the ground. And if you ever try it, you'll see exactly what I mean. I'll be sure to post a link in the description area of this video and on the screen up at the top where you can find a simple location to order this tool. The next tool I want to talk about is your smartphone. And there's a fantastic app. You can see it on the screen here. It's called Soil Test Pro. And this allows you to utilize essentially GPS technology to grid sample your farm on your own. The beauty is it doesn't cost a thing. It's completely free. You can download this on Android or iPhones. I'd encourage you to go to your app store and find it and install it on your phone, and then look through it as we play the rest of this video. From the start screen of Soil Test Pro, we're going to go ahead and act like we've done a sample job on this farm before. A couple things. It did ask us to do a GPS boundary of our field, so we've gone ahead and we did that. You would just enable the location settings on your phone and then turn on the app and tell it that you're going to trace a field off with your vehicle. I recommend using a four-wheeler or a tractor, but you can do it in your farm truck, or heck, you could do it on horseback if you wanted to. So we're going to act like that field's already saved in here. We'll go to Soil Sample Jobs, and then it tells us that we need to start a new job. and it says, hey, you are in field called example. Do you want to start here? We'll hit yes. And it gives us some information that we get to select. I recommend utilizing a 2.5 acre grid size. And you can enter whatever you want into your grid generator. And we're going to go ahead and move on to our map. So this is one little strip of a field that we do some stockpile grazing on, and it is a smaller field than what we probably should use for an example, but we're going to go ahead and manipulate the grid a little bit. So you can see that there is a square grid, and we can twist the grid if we think that's going to allow us to get more acres covered. Obviously, with this paddock, being that it's just a strip, it's about 5 acres, so it's not very big at all. We're going to hit 3 samples to get some uniformity across our sampling region. At this stage, we're going to hit the button that says use and finalize what our grid looks like, and we're going to tell it, let's start sampling. So now you can see a GPS signal has told us exactly where we're located, and we need to get our little red circle to hover over the red dots. The orange dot is the geographic center point of the field, which may or may not matter to you. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and get ready to pull a sample. We're at our first sample point, and whenever we go to a sampling area, it's important for you to pull about 6 samples, probably 6 to 8 feet apart, so that you can get a good uniform sample. It would be unfortunate if you only did 1 sample per dot and you got into a very small portion of your soil and had some type of, for lack of a better term, zebra results, as opposed to having something that is truly uniform and representative of the soil profile that's in your pasture. So we're going to go ahead and pull our first sample. So we're going to be sure that our Tupperware is down as close as we can get it to the ground. We'll insert our drill bit and start pulling our sample cord. You want to be sure and rotate your drill bit as you extract it from the soil, so you pull all the soil out that's on the bit. If you just pull it without rotating, number 1, it can get stuck. Number 2, you may not get truly a uniform sample. So just for instance, you can see the amount of soil that's adhered to the end of the bit. We'd want to capture all of that for our sample. So once our sample is pulled, this is what we've got in the Tupperware, and this will be our first sample at this station that we dump into our sample bag. For simplicity's sake, we would label this as belonging to this will be our name here, the soil sample name, and we can put that it belongs to the field we'd call sample. We'd say this is the example field. Now that our soil sample is done, we're going to hit the done button, and it asks you if you're ready to ship your sample. I just usually hit save for later because I send it to a different lab. And then from there, we're able to move on to our next job. So we'll hit the new job button and we'll go on. So now we're at the stage where we're ready to send off our sample that we've pulled. You can sample each grid individually if you want to. For simplicity here, we sample the whole pasture on a grid, but we submit each pasture combined as one sample so we can get a fertilizer recommendation for the entire field. If you wanted to do it and sample each grid individually and then submit a test for each grid, you could also do that on your own if you wanted to do so. This is our soil test form, what it looks like. We've had a little bit of rain today, so forgive us for some of the raindrops on the paper. We're going to select test number 23. And test 23 is testing for a lot of your macronutrients, and we're concerned about phosphorus, potassium, and then also a lime recommendation, which will give us an indicator as to what the soil pH is in our pasture. This test is pretty common, and there's obviously a lot of options on the sheet. Don't let this confuse you. If you ever have questions, call the folks at your nearest soil testing lab, and they can tell you exactly which test number you need to consider. Thank you for joining us today. This episode started with looking at Broomsedge, a plant that tells us that we have some work we need to do on our farm, and it points us to the management practice of soil testing. I hope that today was beneficial, looking at some of the tools provided through the Collect and Go sample system, and also how the simplicity of applying their tools to your pasture can be very easy. And then hopefully there is a no fear complex in filling out and submitting a soil test and utilizing GPS technology. Again, check your app store for Soil Test Pro. That's a very helpful app that's free. It allows you to utilize GPS technology to get your sampling work done. Watch for next week's episode where we get results back and we look at what we're supposed to do about this broomsedge problem. I told you last episode that we're looking at some acidity problems that we can do some correction with lime and also phosphorus. Stay with us, folks. Thanks for joining us. This has been another